Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm good. What about you?
Good. I'm absolutely fantastic. You're just back from Vegas.
I am.
Now
She's
we're going to be
amazing.
talking about inherited wealth. Have you, by any chance, spent all the inherited wealth that your future generations could have?
I could have, but no, I didn't. It could have been easily done, though.
Oh, tell me about it. It's easy to do that, isn't it? But that's what Vegas is all designed to do. It's designed to separate you from your money.
Oh, it definitely is.
In a nutshell, in the most polite way possible, to give you that exact experience that you would want. And I've got great memories. It's like, but you didn't have much cash left, and your wealth's maybe gone down on I'll bet it all on black.
You could see how somebody could easily do that, but yeah, it's a place where you could really come out with nothing if you're not careful. But
And
fortunately, I'm not that type of person. So
that nicely brings us on to this doing it for the kids. And this is what we're going to talk about today on the Wealth Creation Show. So, if you're watching out there, listening into the podcast, this is about building a buy-to-let legacy for you and your family's future. Now, I'll give you a wee insight into what started me off on this. This is actually a photograph this was actually taken, it was the Sunday Times, I think it was, or the Times newspaper actually took this. Now, we're sitting outside 118 Taylor Street, and there was a for sale board there at that time. And it was all to do with, they had identified myself at that time. This must have been about 20 years ago, at least, as investing in property and a property investor, and how that manifested itself for the future generations. So this is my young family at that time. There's Ben, and there's Scott. So Ben's here, right here, and there's Scott, and there's Tony. There's Elaine, and there's myself. I look a bit more healthier. Just as well, I've not got the same shirt on, eh? Somebody would have said you tightwad. But I still had no hair at that time as well.
You've got a wee bit more than you do now.
So, this is one of the reasons we want to talk about. This is why I think, are you seeing more and more people actually getting into property investment and just investment in general to provide generational wealth?
Yeah, I see it quite a lot, and it's people that are coming forward and thinking, right, what could I do? I need to set up something for retirement. Thinking of their kids and what they could leave for their kids, and just thinking of things on the long term. And that's what building a buy-to-let portfolio is all about. It's about that long-term investment. Give yourself a bit of income and to be able to leave something for your kids and your family when you're not here.
Absolutely. Julie, if you've got any questions, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Afternoon, Julie.
Generational wealth and what we're talking about today. Now, generational wealth. So I'll tell you one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons why I got into this. It was also one of the reasons why I looked at property investment as the vehicle to set me free. At the time, for me, Richard, it was all about I had absolutely no time. And it was never about the money for me. It was all about the time. And it was the only way I could get back my time would be to actually replace my income to enable to be able to do that. And that's how I saw this property investment vehicle was an ability to actually, and that's why I jokingly say we're almost like property time lords, if that makes sense. Because the income's great, but the income is only as good as what you would want to use it for. And for me, it was to buy back my time. So that's why more and more professionals approach us and actually get us, like surgeons and doctors and lawyers and accountants and that. That's why more and more people approach us, Richard, isn't it? To actually invest in property for them and actually look after it for them, because they don't have the time, but they certainly have the money.
Yeah, I mean, you make the joke about the Time Lord thing, but in essence, it is you're giving yourself back time, and time is the most precious thing. And you're in the long run, it will allow you to retire maybe early and enjoy life for more. And in the meantime, it allows you to create more income without using up your time and your precious time, because you've got this machine that, if it's set up correctly, works, and if you've got the right people looking after it, should just obviously function on its own and create an income for you and allow you to have more time and ultimately retire early and have more time then as well. And to enjoy family and things that you would want to do instead of working yourself to the bone and using all that time.
It's quite interesting to say that about setting up correctly, because a lot of people don't realise there is different ways to set up that vehicle.
Yeah,
I almost see this like an investment fund, but it's your own personal investment fund. You know how you have a fund manager, and you go to a fund manager and you say, look, okay, invest my money in the stock market alongside everybody else's money, and the fund manager, say at Standard Life for that, looks after that investment vehicle, and they produce income and they produce results as a result of it. It's no guaranteed payouts, and it's no guaranteed anything else, or up or down in money. It's just that it depends on what your attitude to risk is, whether you invest in low bonds, which is pretty secure. They'll give you an income every single month, but they've got a low return, or you invest in more riskier approach as the stock market itself. I mean, investment houses risk that on a category of 1 to 7, on a scale of 1 to 7. They actually put that as investing in the UK stock market as category 6, which is high risk. Category 7 overseas international investments. So that's how they perceive even the stock market investment. And we would think that's normal mainstream stuff. But having your own property investments is like your own vehicle. You own it, you control it, you can make more decisions on it and more flexibility about what you own in that wrapper, if that makes sense. And then also, we're effectively the people that manage we don't manage the fund, you manage that yourself, but we manage the day-to-day operations of that.
The functionality of
that happens and get a fixed return for it. But we only get paid if you get paid.
Yeah.
Whereas fund management get paid regardless, because they get paid on the percentage of the value of the fund. So I kind of think it's a bit unfair that fund management should be paid regardless, even though they're not performing well, whereas we don't get paid at all if we don't get anything.
No, I mean, your property management side of things, they control, or we, if we are doing it, control the functionality of your portfolio. But unless we are doing that correctly and set out to do what we're meant to do, we don't, and you don't get paid, then we don't get paid. So it's in everybody's best interest for that to work correctly. And the whole setup thing as well, I mean, whether you set it up in a limited company or whatever, I mean, I know we'll talk about that later, but there's a lot of different things that you need to do to make sure it's set up correctly and it functions properly.
So let's talk about this. I mean, bricks and mortar will never really go out of fashion, will it?
No.
People always need homes, which makes buying a buy-to-let one of the safest investments. And I will say that, safest investments. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't know any other investment vehicle that gives you the returns it gives you, but is actually as safe as houses. We've all heard that saying.
Yeah.
Safest investment strategy around. It's also a smart way to build a tax-efficient inheritance vehicle, something today's young are becoming more reliant on than previous generations that with the ever-widening gap between the house prices and incomes. Now, why do I say the younger generations are becoming more and more reliant on it? Well, there's actually the Institute of Fiscal Studies. I don't know if you've got that article as well, Richard. This is
I've got that here.
The Institute of Fiscal Studies actually did an article on inherited wealth on course to be much more important determination of lifetime resources for today's young than it was in previous generations. And it goes on in full detail, and we'll post this later on in here anyway. But it's to give you actually, I'll maybe post this right now so everybody gets a chance to see this. I'll get the link.
Yeah, it'll be good for them to see what we're looking at.
Copy, and we can paste that in the comments. Here we go. So that's in the comment there, and you can read it at your own leisure. But basically, it says inherited wealth is on course, and it's more important in the fact that it's a determinant for young people and the next generations to come than it was before for previous generations. Why do you think this is? Is this because pensions will no longer exist and the state's no longer looking after you, and we've all got this perception that effectively we've got a broken system that can't actually look after us anymore?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I mean, my age and younger as well, when we think ahead, I think, well, I mean, there's not going to be any state pension by the time we come to retirement. So a lot of people are looking at, well, they need to take action themselves to make sure that they're secured in the future and that it's secure for their families in the future. Whether that be personal pensions or whether it be building a buy-to-let portfolio where they could get that extra income and then have that at the end to leave to their kids to look after themselves up to that point, and then leave behind as inheritance as well. But yeah, state pensions are not going to be here when I reach that age anyway.
It's one of the most important factors that most people think they'll actually be wealthy later on, and they actually expect to inherit that wealth from someone else.
Mhm.
However, you know what my comment to that is? Who do you want to die to become wealthy? That's effectively in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody wants that to happen. It's inevitable, will happen. But think about that mindset about you think, okay, I'll get money when they go. And it's like, well, I wouldn't want them to go. I want them to stay there forever. So this is why it's key here now to actually start early and start actually building some sort of wealth for you. Now, I used to get told this time and time again from from people around about me who were a lot older than me, saying, start a pension early, start a pension early, start a pension early. We've been over this before. To be honest, pensions can't come anywhere near the performance we get in buy-to-let. Nowhere near it. And I often used to challenge Standard Life. I remember in the early days, I used to phone up Standard Life and say, how much am I getting on my investment funds? And they would go, oh, you're getting about a 4.5% return every year. I went, okay, then cash them. They're like, what? I'm like, cash them. And they're like, why? Because I could take your money and I could actually make about 15% on that, at least net. So why on earth would I invest in you and keep you going for the next X amount of years if I can make triple the amount on return? And it would be a lot more safer than the volatile investments that, you know, our stock market or investment funds that you operate. And you can't guarantee me I'm going to get an income, and I'm certainly not in control of that fund. So that's kind of how I saw it in the early days. And I still see it in my mindset of that today. I had the unwavering belief that if I wasn't a millionaire, and I'm not saying that lightly, if I wasn't a millionaire by the time I retired at 65-year-old, in other words, I didn't have more than $1 million in the bank, I deserved everything I could get. If I wasn't, I deserved poverty if that's the case. So I never had any reliance on a state pension. I never had any reliance on anything else. I never put any money aside in the state pension. I only do that now because of the tax advantage of doing it. And I'm near enough state pensionable age, so you can get a huge uplift in the tax rebate you get towards it. Plus the fact you get a wee bit of growth, but you'll get it out earlier. I could draw it now. So I'm getting, if I put money in now, I get a 20% uplift at least. And then if I'm a higher rate payer, I get the tax back on the higher rate because I'm with the amount I put in. So it's a huge benefit to actually, in your later life, to actually put a lot of money into your pensions because you get that rebate, and then you can draw it down, you know, later on. And actually, you can release 25% of it immediately and actually have that tax free in your hand. It doesn't perform as well, but near the end, if you do it, it makes a lot of money because of the tax advantage for, you know, the higher rate payer and the additional amount that the government puts on. So that's why I've got a pension now for that very reason. But outside of that, you know, I kind of looked at the attitude, I deserve everything I get because I know the formula, I know how to do this, I know how to make far more. So why would I not be able to do that? And that's where I came up with property investment. This is actually quite an interesting chart there. Now, whether we can actually decipher what's going on here. This is actually this spread of wealth, distribution of expected inheritance received by decade of birth as a percentage of mean lifetime earnings within the birth cohort, which ultimately means that more and more people here are relying on generational wealth to get them by. Yeah. So 1960s, you can see that it's quite low, the percentage of inheritance. And then in 1970s, it got higher. And in the 1980s, it got higher as well. And I think it's going to get a lot higher to come as we go, because more and more people will actually depend on that. So you can read that at your own leisure, that article, because it is actually quite a good one for the studies. But back to this, I mean, more and more people will buy to let safest investment, safest houses. Property has stood the test of time as a solid way to create wealth with an asset that's forever in demand. Now, why is it forever in demand? Well, because we're not building enough houses, and we've still got to provide houses for the people that we've not built enough for in previous generations. Housing stock, social housing stock, since the 1980s, since the sell-off with the Conservative Party, has actually declined by 69%. The actual total social housing stock. So that's another demographic, which actually means that more and more reliance has been put on the private rented sector to actually provide that function. Now, before you castigate us, we are big fans here of social housing building. It's the most important thing. If the government wants to solve any issue with rented accommodation or private rented, build more houses for social rent at affordable rent levels. I'm a great advocate of it. At that point, when I'm no longer needed, I will exit the market, bye-bye, and take my money elsewhere and do something else. But for now, I can provide a really good return on investment, plus provide a really good house for the people, the tenants. I didn't like to call them tenants because I didn't like it making it look like that. David, John, Mark, or whatever it is. I prefer to know them by their name because it's a personal thing for me to do that. But not every landlord's like that. Some landlords are actually quite draconian and quite clinical about the whole process. So it's always stood the test of time. In the last 20 years, property prices have gone up by 170% in the UK, the average property price, and inflation's gone up 70%. So it's outperformed net 100% increase in property prices in the last 20 years, over and above inflation.
Yeah.
What does that say? And you know what as well it's done? It actually pays you to wait while the value goes up. That's not even taking into account natural rent. It comes in, the investment. So that keeps you going day to day. So the rent actually provides a monthly income for people that want to do that if they get it right. And then the increase in wealth over the time, capital gains. There will be capital gains. If anybody says, and don't be delusional out here, whatever anybody tells you, you always forecast on property prices doubling in value in the next 15 to 20
years. Yeah.
Not 10 years, not 7 years, but 15 to 20 years. That's how you should be forecasting in your expectations. If it comes early, your quid's in, happy days, but do not fall into this trap that you should be doing something on the expectation that property prices will double in the next 10 years. They're unlikely to do that right now because of the way the situation is in the economy. But we're coming full circle, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
We're coming back to where we were in 2007 and actually increasing. And I think since 2007, by the time we get to 2027, you'll probably find that property prices have gone up another 100% since 2007. And that was when the crash happened. So again, as I say, 15 to 20 years. So it's always to the test of time. It's another thing, it can't disappear overnight. It's not like crypto where it drops down in value to rock bottom overnight. It actually still keeps going, and it pays you to wait while it goes up in value over the long, medium to long term. So that's another thing. And anybody that's out there, you notice all the people in crypto's gone quiet.
Yeah.
Lately, you don't hear anybody at all about crypto banging that drum. Knew it was going to crypto. I was watching Bill Gates the other day, and Bill Gates says he actually likes investing in things that produce something. It provides something. He does not invest in crypto at all because he doesn't see that as anything other than your whole mindset in crypto is based on the principle that you look at someone else thinking that the value of what you've got will be worth more to them than what you've got yourself. And that's pure speculation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So nobody can. Sorry, Richard, go on.
No, I was just going to say. So obviously, capital appreciation and things, obviously in the long term. But I mean, looking at things that obviously wealth creation doesn't happen. The true wealth creation happens over a longer period.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's naturally motivating when people plan to include some things like earlier rewards and things as well. So
what earlier rewards would they be? I mean, as the equity grows in your buy to let, you can use it to realise some of your life goals, long life goals before retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I think things leading up to retirement. I mean, there is things that obviously you're going to feel the benefit of during the process of having your buy to let.
Yeah.
And that could allow you, obviously, with that additional income to maybe extend and improve where you live just now, your current home, your own home. It gives you a better spending power, increase your spending power, and help you maybe work towards your dream home, possibly, if you're not already in it.
Done that.
And you could also buy a second home overseas, maybe, where you weren't able to maybe get a mortgage for before.
Done that.
I was just waiting when you say done that. So exactly, this is the thing. Obviously, if you do this over the long term, this will allow you to obviously do these things as you go, and then plus have be secure at the end for retirement as well.
Yeah.
One that's down is obviously pay for your child's fairy tale wedding. No, I didn't really agree with that.
I'm not really sure how to get to that point.
Yeah, but I think I see people spending tens of thousands on weddings, and I think, God, it's crazy. It's a waste.
So I'll tell you what I did. I actually paid for the majority of the deposit on my daughter's house.
Yeah.
So
which I think is a better use of money.
Contribution towards our house, and that contribution probably would have been on somebody's fairy tale wedding. And to be honest, I would rather invest it in their future rather than actually give them that instant memory. You could conjure that memory in your mind as far as you're concerned, and just pretend you actually had that fairy tale wedding, and actually just run down with a couple of suits on and take pictures of yourself and just look at it for the rest of your life and think, and you've saved yourself almost £20,000 to £30,000.
Yeah,
you can actually invest in your next home.
I mean, spending 20, 30 grand on a wedding, I think's excessive. And people want to do that, and they've got the money to do that. Fine. Yeah. I think it could be invested in a lot better way. Like you say,
paying for lifetime trips in far-flung places?
I think if you've got the income and that's what you want to do, and go and see parts of the world and everything, then do that.
Okay, this is and I'm about to do that. This is the only time I'm actually going to Jamaica for the very first time, and then it's the only time I've actually said, I tell you what, for once in our lifetime, I probably think I deserve it, or I've earned it, not deserve it, because there's an entitlement culture here. I probably think I've earned it. I'm going to actually fly first class. And they said, well, first class is actually business class, where you have your own pods and everything like that. Because it's a huge distance. And I thought, I'm going to experience this for the first time, and I'm going to see what it's like. So I'm actually going to do that for the very first time. Now, most people know that I'm a bit of a tightwad. I would rather actually spend it on buying another house. But I kind of think I'm at that age now where I've really got to experience something, or it's all been for nothing.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that, and I think that's fine. And after just doing a long haul, business class will be worth it.
Yeah, it probably will. I mean, the idea of sacrificing everything today for a better tomorrow is thrown around quite a lot. I mean, the delayed gratification, isn't it? But it isn't universally appealing. Fortunately, it's perfectly possible to strike a balance of medium-term rewards and future financial freedom. And I did that over a period of time. So I've done it already, so I can teach other people how to do that. And that's why we have our private Zoom sessions every Thursday. So at the end of this month, actually, and Thursday coming up. This Thursday coming up. So this Thursday coming up, we'll be having a private Zoom session. So there's a link in here to Richard's email. You can email him if you want to take part in that private Zoom sessions. You could be a novice to this. You could be completely just starting for the first time. You could be a seasoned veteran in this. And you could be able to come along as well. There's no barrier here for people that want to take part in this private Zoom session, but it's actually just and if you want more information and you just want to listen in, then by all means just listen in. You don't need to contribute. You'll not be put on the spot or anything like that. No one's here to judge you. No one's here to do anything else. So there's an option, and that could go on every single month. You can come along to the private Zoom session. There is no upsell, by the way. I'm not selling you a course. We're not selling you anything. We're just telling you how to generate wealth in the best way possible for yourself to achieve what you want out of life and what your goals are as well. And that's it. So I mean, that's what that is all about in rewards and financial freedom. So you can also, I mean, a classic example is you can give it to your children for lifetime start. I mean, the average age of first-time buyer has risen, and I'd mentioned this, by 6 years since 2007. It now stands at 34-year-old for a first-time buyer. And at the same time, Rightmove also reports that a solo first-time buyer typically needs, drum roll,
I know, I thought this was quite...
£74,402 to buy a home. Now, around here, that's never the case because our valuations, our average house price is around about the 180 grand mark. But in the UK, it's 354,000 or 355 grand. So I've no doubt that's why it's 74,000 for a first-time buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went on to about the fact that I only ever did this. I never did this for myself. I always did this to give me the choices and give the options I wanted to do. And the one was to help Tony buy her first house. Because she never would have got it. She would never, the mortgage company couldn't give her enough to actually get the mortgage because she wasn't earning enough. And I think most first-time buyers are having to wait because at 34, you're probably earning a lot more than you would at 24.
Yeah, I mean, and when you say about obviously average in Fife around about 180, so you're 180, 200,000 say, so there's 20 grand at least, and it's like, where are people getting this from? Unless they're inheriting it or they're getting it for their parents.
Bank of Mum and Dad, as I said before, it's becoming more and more important. Just as I said there, and that, and where it's the 90s and the 2000s and that generation, more and more people will be providing for their children. I see a lot now when people are actually downsizing and releasing equity in order to provide for their generations to come. I think it's actually a fantastic idea. I do think that we should take control of our futures and actually provide for our children for later on, and teach our children to provide for their children, so they no longer become dependent on the state, and they no longer depend on other people to provide them with their future. They're in control of their own circumstances. So I'm a big advocate of that.
Yeah, I mean, you see, obviously, the Bank of Mum and Dad and higher education costs and escalating rents and soaring house prices have made it harder and harder for people to get on the property ladder. And parents want to do what they can, and investing in buy-to-let can help ease your children's path into, obviously, as they take their steps into the world. I mean, there's a lot of different things that, obviously, you see that parents have to do for their kids. I mean, providing a place to live when they're studying and things. We see that quite a lot. I rent. I do quite a lot of rentals for people who are studying in St Andrews and things, and it's the mum and dads that are paying the rent. People are drawing down equity for deposits to help them buy their first time property, if they're first time buyers, and getting them ready-made.
Giving them the ready-made business to take over if they share your love for property. Now, I'll be honest, none of my kids want anything to do with property. I think it's just that they're at a stage where they don't want to be like so clinical like I am and obsessed with it. maybe that's what it is. I think later on they'll probably take to it, but that's why I devised the system. So you guys are looking after the whole thing, and it's no longer dependent on them at all to get involved. So I'm no longer really getting involved either. And this vehicle still provides me with an income, regardless, come hell or high water. It's no longer dependent on my ability to perform. And that's what a lot of people don't realise. I think they're going to be financially free. I'm going to be financially free. Woohoo! And it's like, so what are you doing tomorrow? Oh, I've got to go and fix a leaky tap. It's like, okay, that's not financially free.
No.
Because you've got another job. I'm going to manage the properties myself. You've got another job. So you've traded the existing job for a new job. I never wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to get out of this. I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it and have the choices to do that. I mean, recently, Download Festival, they're no bother. Week back at work, away to Spain the next week. And that was entirely possible, and everything ran seamlessly without any of my input at all. And I don't get it. All I do is basically tick off the boxes when the remits come in about the rents, and that's it. That's the only thing I keep tracking now, what comes in and when.
Yeah, I think you see, obviously, I mean, you're pointing out there about people trading in one job for the other and being so involved. And I mean, at the start of your journey, Jim, when you done your portfolio and was building it, you were very hands-on. But obviously, once that got off the ground and things, and you got obviously property management set up and involved in things, then that's and through the years, and now you've got to the point where you can just go away for a week or so and not have to worry about the ins and outs of how your portfolio is running, because it's been run for you. So you've got that time. You've gave yourself time.
I think I chose in the beginning to believe I could do it myself to save myself money. But when I worked it out, though, Richard, I actually realised that I was actually losing money, and this goes back to opportunity cost and the fact that I could have been doing something more productive elsewhere, which could have earned me a hell of a lot more money than actually the money I was trying to save by managing the property myself. And also the inconvenience of outside hours, because you'll have to deal with tenants at outside hours. I mean, I've been round at a tenant's house on Christmas Day because I burst radiator on Christmas morning. And when they all sat around and said, "So how's your day so far?" And I went, "Well, what do you think?"
But then that's a good example of how you and our Wealth Creation shows and our rooms and things, how you're passing on the knowledge of this is what not to do, because I've learned from experience.
I've learned a few things. The same thing over and over again. I could still manage it. Not realizing that actually you need to put a sustainable system in place in order to make sure that you are it's no longer dependent on your ability to perform. It's the only obligation you could leave, because all you're doing, if you go eventually and pop your clogs, all you're doing is you're leaving another job for your children. Look at the recent ones we have in leaving, and I'm not going to name names, But a very well-known retailer actually, he popped off the planet. That's him gone now. But he left all that to his children, all his portfolio, and they're like, I didn't want this. It's too much hassle.
Yeah.
And they've not realised they've not. I don't think they've been educated to the fact that it's the best thing since sliced bread, and they should have actually made sure they kept it because it could provide themselves with absolutely excellent income. But because it was more or less a job to them, they thought, I didn't want a job, so I'll just chop down the tree that bears the fruit, and that's the end of it. But what they don't realise is they could have had that generating wealth every single time, and then they could have passed it on to their children to generate wealth. And then their children could have passed on to their children, their grandchildren, and then their great-grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren. And the legacy and the generational wealth they would have left would be phenomenal. Another one we talked about what you can help is educating them in their financial management and the wealth creation. This is what we do all the time. So if you're out there, these shows are timeless. What we're talking about now, you could talk about this in 20 years' time, and it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly relevant. It's not relevant to this point in time. It's the same principles every single time. Teaching them independence and responsibility earlier on. That's another great thing that this does. And so while you never know what your path of your children will choose after they finish school, your buy-to-let business can always help them make a positive contribution to the beginning of their journey. They don't need to be involved in it. And that's why when you do it right, it passes on to them. They no longer have a second job, but it has income to provide for them. I've always said to the kids, look, guys, do what you want. Scott's involved with Crusoe just now, helping them run that. He's also involved in sound and lighting in the theatre, because that's his qualification. Ben's in IT. Ben's working in a factory now and having a great time, but he's actually trained in IT. But he's absolutely having a fabulous time. And Tony is a trained, part qualified accountant, and she's actually a postie. But my point is, well, they have all the choices to do all that because they want to do that. They never need to worry about money ever again, because that's always coming in because of the vehicle are built. And their children probably never really need to worry about money ever again for that reason. And that's why I built it like that, for that purpose. So I've got no qualms about, it's no for me. I don't want a Ferrari. I kind of think if I go and buy a Ferrari, then my children and the children are no here yet, and the future generations are all going to suffer, because for me personally, it's nothing to do with anybody else, and I don't see this in anybody else. I just think it's my own selfishness that I went and bought that and spent that money on something that could have helped everybody else in the generations to come. Especially now knowing that buying that would cost me around 700,000 over 10 years and 2 million over 20 years. That's a huge hit just to make that decision and the opportunity cost. But that's another show, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like the show we've done on the Lamborghini. And it just demonstrates. Yeah.
It's all about creating lifetime assets and passive income. Whether you choose to grow a lettings portfolio or stick to one buy-to-let, being a landlord can be hassle-free and rewarding experience. Now, when we talk about buy-to-let, Richard, we could talk about anything from 1 to 30 to 40 to 20 to 5. It doesn't really matter, does it?
No, I mean, no, it doesn't really matter whether you've got 1 or 2 or obviously up to about 30 or 40, like you say. The natural upward trajectory of house prices and rents protect the value and improves the yield of your investment year after year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you've got 1 or 2 properties or more. And as the equity grows in your buy-to-lets, you can use it to acquire more properties and or improve and up the value of your existing portfolio without dipping into savings and things as well.
See the helps I get on TikTok now for talking about maximising rent and stuff like that. Folk going, you're a parasite, you're this and you're that and everything. It's like that. Hold it. Just backtrack on that. You'd never listen to what I said on there, because it said, your obligation is to maximise the rents as much as possible. And if you need to charge another £5 a month to the tenant in order to have £60, and if you've got 10 properties, it's £600 over the year.
Yeah.
And then if a boiler breaks, you've got the money to actually buy the new boiler. Now, you're not going to buy it for 600, but you know what I mean, the principle there. I says, that's why I'd said about maximising the rents, so you can reinvest for the tenant and for their welfare, because if they've not got enough, then they're not getting it, and they're living in a potentially hazardous property.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even just those small increases in rent allows you to upgrade your property, make sure it's a better environment for tenants to live in, increases the value of the property and benefits you. You get that wee bit extra to reinvest. So and it's a win-win all round for the tenants and the
Yeah.
landlord.
So we're not necessarily talking about maximising the rents to make enough money to put in your pocket. It's more or less to provide for the houses and your stock improvements, and possibly as the equity grows in your buy-to-lets as well, you can use it to acquire more properties or improve the value of your existing portfolio without dipping into your savings.
Yeah.
Paul Champolina put a comment on this morning. Now that's landlord action, and also he does. We know Paul very well. I know Paul personally, but he does the landlords, landlords and tenants from hell and all the rest of it on Channel 4, and that repeats all the time. But Paul actually put a comment on this morning saying the government in England are got something in their paper saying that accidental landlords tend to be better for tenants than actual letting agents. And I'm like, okay. But my question for that is then, look at this further. Is it possible that accidental landlords are maybe actually losing money out their savings because they don't know what to do and when to do it and how to do it, because they don't have the knowledge or the skill of how to do it? And also, it doesn't provide for security of a tenure over a professional landlord or a letting agent, because the accidental landlord at some point in time will want to sell.
Yeah, more than likely they will if you're an accidental landlord. And I mean, that's a strange one that he comments that. So does he mean, or is he coming from the point of view that accidental landlords maybe have more compassion towards tenants and we're more clinical about it? I don't know.
It's the government. The government's actually put it in their white paper as a justification for saying that, for whatever it is they're trying to push through. Not the government in Scotland, the government in England. All the things that they're trying to do in England right now are things that have already been done in Scotland. And personally, I welcome all the legislation that's coming in. I don't have any problem with that at all, because I think it's good for the private renting sector to professionalise the sector even more. And it's also good for getting rid of all the landlords that possibly wouldn't be following that legislation, which is a very few. Remember, it's very few, but it will get rid of these people and they'll sell up and move on, because they don't want to deal with that. It'll also get rid of the people that are flying by the seat of their pants, and they're actually, their mortgage is almost the same price as their rent. So when it comes to repairs, they've not got any money at all to do anything. Therefore, the tenant suffers all the time. So that's why I think it's actually quite good to have that in. I mean, being a landlord can give you actually completely passive income when your managing agent looks after the tenants and maintenance, repairs, and legal compliance on your behalf. Exactly what happens here, Richard. So you can also use your letting incomes to diversify. So when you get an income, you can put it into ISAs, you can put it into pensions. That's what we do, and it's for dipping in your toe into more adventurous territory. Like, if you want, you could do art, you could do shares. You could even do crypto.
I wouldn't recommend crypto.
Yeah,
but it gives you that option. It gives you that option, though.
I'll be honest. If you're going to go to a casino and gamble, I'm not really sure which one's better. Which option you would take, a casino, or would you actually do crypto? And I kind of think if I'm going to do anything, because when you go to a casino, the first thing you should do is be prepared to lose that money.
Yeah.
So I kind of think if you do crypto, you've got to be prepared to lose that money. Look at the fighter that lost 40 million.
That's crazy.
Recently, because he put everything he got on his prize money into crypto, and it dropped like a stone, and he's lost millions upon millions. And I'm like, did you not see this? It was a total gamble. So I think that's one of the things that everybody has to be aware of. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, like you say, like the casino thing. I mean, if you go into a casino and you should be prepared to lose. I think you should, it's like kind of, if you go into something like that, set a budget and have fun and be prepared to lose that. Don't gamble. And I think if, like you say, obviously lettings income could be obviously put in the ISAs or whatever, and it gives you that option to be able to maybe invest that into shares and things, crypto if you want to. Be very careful about how you further invest out with that money. The best thing probably would be to do is to reinvest into property and keep building.
But the key is most people will do it for a silver lining for retirement. Yeah. I mean, financial freedom more than anything else provides a choice, but most incomes aren't enough to retire in comfort. But even a small portfolio of just one or two properties, buying to let can give you, a kind of a kind of enjoyable retirement beyond the state of personal pension.
Yeah, and it's like we spoke about, like obviously whether it's one or two properties or whether you've got 30 properties, that could provide you with, like you say, an enjoyable retirement beyond what the state pension would provide you. And it also provides you with decades of pure income. Obviously after your mortgages and things are repaid, and equity on your portfolio to release for a lifestyle and luxury purchases if you want to do that. Don't be running away and buying Ferraris, but it does give you that option to have money there to obviously enjoy maybe some finer things in life and give you back time to enjoy that and the money to do it with as well.
Here's quite an interesting one I had the other day. I was talking to someone who'd actually been made bankrupt before, and they had these properties they had invested in when they were made bankrupt.
Yeah.
But because there was no money in these properties because the equity had dropped in the credit crunch, they actually left them with the ownership of the properties. They didn't actually take them off them because there was nothing in them. Exactly. Because the liquidator looked at them and says, well, the property is worth 80 grand. You're due 100 grand on it. So there's no point in us liquidating it because we're not going to get any money out of it. So they left them with her and now they've recovered. She's got them and she's out of bankruptcy. And I'm like, what happened there? I'm like, she says, no, that's what actually happens. So it's like, does that then tell me that you should mortgage yourself up to the hilt?
I was just going to say, mortgage up to the house, and then they won't take them off you. And then once you're out your bankruptcy,
you've got an income coming in once you're out your bankruptcy in about a year. That's mental. I'm still processing that because I can't believe that actually happened. But that's quite normal circumstances to happen when bankruptcy happens. If you've got second properties, they'll not take them off you if they're not worth anything, because there's nothing to get anyway. So they don't take everything. That's weird. So it would a cushion for unexpected expenses. Here's a classic what I used it recently. See, when we came into lockdown and my knee had to get operated on, this is exactly what I did this for in the first place. So I would have money aside to do and repair my knee because it was essential and there was no way in the hospital to do it. And I would be complete in agony for a long time. See, my teeth as well. I actually had one which was actually quite bad for a long, long time. And I actually went and got it all sorted privately. So for me, it's the financial cushion for the unexpected events. I always thought about that. I always thought if one of my family members, anything happens to them and they don't have the income to do that, or one of my siblings or anything like that, I would always be there to be able to provide the income to do that. And that's what I always dreamed about in the beginning. It was never about me. It was about what I could do for other people and what I could do for them. And that's what pulled me on all the time. Hence the reason why I never had in my mind about, the fast cars and the big castles. I did have a castle in my mind at one point in time. But that's long gone. That's out of my system now.
But that's a good thing because you've created this thing, Jim, and generated this wealth, and that's allowed you to. I mean, as good as the NHS health services, you're able to fix things privately, like your knee. I mean, how long would you wait for your knee to get fixed properly?
I'd still be waiting now.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's really what you want to be able to have that financial cushion for things like that.
So it was just that sheer luxury and sheer advantage. So to me, that's a luxury, by the way. And it was something I was able to afford because of what I'd done previous. So it's all the effort I put in previous. It's the farmer mentality, isn't it? It's that farmer mentality about you plant the seed, you nurture the seed, you look after the seed, you protect the seed, you grow the seed, you plant, you keep nurturing it, you plant more seeds at a different timeline, and every time you get a new harvest every single year. And every time a new seed actually comes online, you get a new harvest on top of that new harvest. I always looked at it like this. A job, here's a job for you. You get to the end of the year, your money counter starts at zero again. A buy-to-let portfolio, you get to the end of the year, your wealth has gone up. Your money counter doesn't start at zero anymore. It's starting from where it ended up, and then it builds up for there again. So that's how I always saw property investment and buy-to-let. And I always saw it as well as it provided for a lifestyle, not a living. So it was always a lifestyle choice to do property investment, buy-to-let investment. It was never for day-to-day living expenses. That's what my job was for. And that's why I disciplined myself just to survive on my job income. And if I had more money outside my job income, I was then investing it back into property again.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite clinical about the whole process and kept reinvesting every time, every opportunity I can get, because I knew over the long term it would grow in portfolio size to get that income. And that is down to delayed gratification, farmer mentality. And I always believe you will pay the price now. And this is what I heard from a guy, Jerry Scriven. Jerry Scriven, probably around about 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, Jerry Scriven stood up on stage and says, you will pay the price now or you will pay the price later. But at some point in time, you will pay the price. And when the penny dropped for me, what he meant was, well, you're either going to do it now and compound your wealth over a period of time, or you're going to face the consequences of not doing anything now, and when you retire and actually not having anything to retire on. So that's what he talked about, paying a price now to get it done. Another one that I've read recently, which I love, and I've mentioned it before, is, if you're not prepared to pay the invoice, the price now, wait till you get the bill for later on.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, it's going to be even worse. And this is why most people rely on generational wealth, but this is why more families are actually providing for generational wealth, and they're looking at a vehicle that actually be passed on rather than just liquidated at the point of death. So it's a great idea. You may have no idea how you wish to spend your retirement and how much money you'll need, but you will want to live closer to your family. Will you want to live closer to your family? Move to the seaside, travel to oceans, climb mountains, lie on beaches, just pina colada in your hand and call the waiter to come over and everything like that. All these things that you would imagine, that you would dream of and think, oh, if only I could do that. And you think it's a way out there, but the reality is, if you put the time and effort in now and the investment in now, you can get that later on. Buying to let today can give you more security for options later on in life.
Yeah.
Let's talk about planning and tax efficiency inheritance.
Okay. I mean, that is a big thing, and obviously it's a big concern for parents, is that so much of what they leave to their children could be eaten up, obviously, by tax, and that is a big concern. A lot of people. The current inheritance tax threshold is 300,000, with 40% payable on anything above that. While the rate has been frozen until 2026, it could increase after that. So with the right strategy in place, you can ensure that more of your estate from your buy-to-lets passes on to your children, which is ultimately what people want to be safe in the mind is going to happen. So let's look at ways, obviously,
it's not exactly very fair that you're getting taxed on income you've already been taxed on.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't sit well with me. But the government, the only thing, what's the two things that you never get away with? Death and taxes.
Tax, yeah.
Well, I'm afraid you could maybe cheat death. But you'll not cheat taxes. Well, possibly you might be able to mitigate your tax liability. And that might
not cheat tax, but there's ways and means to, obviously.
Well, with the right strategy in place, you can ensure that more of your estate and your buy-to-let passes to your children.
Yeah.
If you purchase your rental homes in the name of a limited company, which is what I'm doing, and transferring all the ones in our name to the limited company over a period of time to take advantage of capital gains every single year, that's why we're doing it. You can make family members shareholders, and it can pass on. Also, if you've got mortgages in your name, when you pass away, the mortgages go with you. So therefore, the bank wants that money. Whereas if it's in a limited company, it doesn't, because it's a legal entity in its own right. So holding buy-to-let properties in a trust for your children as well can help you avoid the second home stamp duty surcharge if they don't yet own a home. That's quite a good one as well.
Yeah.
You can also reduce the risk of inheritance tax payable to your children when you donate more than 10% of your estate to charities, local sports clubs, or political parties. Surprised about that, eh?
Yeah, I mean, and that comes back to, like we spoke about at the start of the show, about setting things up properly in the beginning, and that's obviously the limited company, or if you're going to set up as a trust, and if your children don't yet own their home, then you will be able to avoid the stamp duty charge, which is quite a good one.
Limited company. See, setting up a limited company is pretty straightforward for anybody out there. We get asked this question all the time, don't we? And we do private Zoom sessions on, the Thursday night. We did one there.
That was our last one that we done, limited company.
I actually showed everybody from start to finish how you set up a limited company, how easy it is, because everybody goes, my God, I wouldn't know what to do. And it's like, well, you don't know what you don't know, and that's why they come to people like us to give them that advice. But again, that advice is free. We don't charge anybody for that. We tell them exactly how to do it and what to do, and we just bring them into that group of people. So rental homes limited company is a really good one. Holding them in your own name now is not the best thing to do often. Again, take advice, financial, from an accountant. I know I'm an accountant by trade previously, but I'm no longer. I could really kind of say I'm a qualified accountant, because obviously that was 2006. I actually finished being in industry as a financial controller.
Yeah.
So technically, if you're waiting for all that time, I'm not really a qualified accountant in the legal terms. I do my own stuff, and I do my own buy-to-let portfolio, and I understand the dynamics of what I need to do and how I need to do it. And so I get that completely. I tell you what, the other one as well, tax inheritance as well. A great one that we're doing right now is in 2 days' time, I buy Elaine and I's forever home, and I'm buying it in a limited company.
Yeah.
Now, I'm buying a limited company because by the time I've rented, and the limited company will pay for all the improvements on the house when we eventually move into it. So that'll be thousands, because I could choose what we want to pay, and it'll all be tax deductible at that time. So they'll pay for all that money. So I'll only need to pay for all the improvements on that house. We will rent that off the company, but then also the income that's derived from that will come back to us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the only amount of money that I'm really paying for rent on that property, for all the improvements and living in that property, is the taxation charged on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's an easy gig,
yeah.
So, and then as well, I will hold no assets, because I'll be able to pass them on to my children, and therefore it'll be generational wealth passed on tax efficiently. So again, that's another process that we are doing in the equation in order to make that happen. So the children will inherit that. So that's another way of doing that. Hold and buy-to-let, we looked at trusts. I'm on the verge of looking at trusts, how to do that, how to go about it. So again, I'll update people when that happens. Reducing inheritance tax planning payable by your children when you donate more than 10% of your estate to charities. I've not even got to that stage yet, but we give to a lot of charities anyway.
Yeah,
but that's nothing to do with inheritance tax planning. That's just what we do, yeah. So by planning in advance with the help of a tax expert, you can provide a solid financial footing for your children and a lasting legacy for future generations of your family. So, I mean, the next steps for this, I'm probably the real life story for this, and the classic example of building a buy-to-let portfolio to leave for their children financial security. And that's what I say to a lot of people. So you can teach it if you've done it. And that's why I talk about the trust thing now, about getting a trust for your children and seeing how that works, because I won't be able to comment on that until I go through the process.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer.
The good thing is, the majority of what we talk about, Jim, is, like you say, obviously, it's good to talk about things in theory, but you are speaking from actual experience. And right, like you say, right up to the point of, maybe you're not quite at the point of, obviously, estate to charities and things like that, but you've got to that. You're 3/4 of the way through this buy-to-let journey and how it works, and the returns you could get, and the benefits of that. So who better to speak and learn from than somebody in your position? So and like you say, there's no upsell. You're giving this to people free, like we are today on shows like this, and also our monthly Zooms, which, by the way, I'll be sending out later on today to all our landlords. And as Jim says, my email link is in the post. So come to me if you want to join in that, by all means.
Take advantage of the monthly Zooms. Take advantage of as much information you can get. God, when I first started, I never had any information. Nobody was able to tell me anything, because nobody knew anything about buy-to-let. It was never a thing. I had no one to go to. I just had to make it up as I went along and invent a wheel. Never mind reinvent a wheel. There was no wheel that existed. So I had to invent a wheel in the beginning and then make that wheel better every single time and improve it as we go. And we're still doing that today, aren't we? We're still making things and improving things.
Yeah, and as things change as well, you need to obviously adapt how things are done. And we're obviously doing that day in, day out, in real time. So it's good to have people to come to learn from. Like you say, when you started, Jim, you didn't have that. So take advantage of that, definitely.
So what's your final words? Let's just wrap up here. What's your final words? What could you tell people to do? What if somebody's just starting out, or if somebody's a seasoned investor, or if somebody's half journey, what would you say? Just touch base with you and get
Yeah,
information?
I think if you're at that early stages or beginning point of thinking, right, this is what I want to do. Planning is key. Speaking to the right people is key. Having the right people in place to look after things for you is key as you go through that journey. So definitely speak to myself, whether it's investment advice, whether it's to do with lettings, management. If I don't have the answer, I'll definitely make sure that you speak to somebody that does.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, and I concur with that completely. The playlist is on here for the previous shows. There are 24 shows, and there's knowledge from here from Linda Martin. There's Kessa Salimi. Linda's a property flipper, really good, excellent in her field. She can teach you a lot about property flipping if that's your thing. There's also Kessa Salimi, who's a fantastic mortgage broker and financial whiz. Really, he's actively buying as well, so they're involved. You've got
really
James
good investor landlord as well.
James actually came on the early days, so James actually has a huge wealth of knowledge for a beginner in the beginning to give you that touch base of where you are in the beginning. You're a letting agent, Richard, as well, so you've got a huge wealth of experience in the letting agency business. I've been in this for 30 years, so I've got a huge experience. So you've got all that condensed information put into all these episodes. There's 24 episodes from before, including the 25th one, which is this one. Take advantage of that. It's always on there. You can listen to it over and over again. And what I recommend to most people, if you really want to get good at this, this is a masterclass every single time. And for me personally, I've read Think and Grow Rich almost into the 50th time. And everybody goes, for God's sake, would you not just read it once and that'd be the end of it? No, because every time I read Think and Grow Rich, just like listening to a podcast, you get new information every single time through the process. So it's the mother of skill is repetition. And it's repetition, it will set you free. And just like sitting an exam and, when you're doing your studies and everything like that, this is all about studying to get the best results and get the best information to be the best at what you do. And if you're in the top 5% in terms of buy to let and property investment, I'm not talking about income, just about knowledge and experience. You're more than likely going to be in the top 5% in terms of earnings, in terms of the people that earn. And that's in Britain, by the way. Out of everybody in Britain, you'll probably be in the top 5% of the number of people that actually earn the top 5% most, the wealthiest people in Britain. You're going to end up there if you become a master at this and understand the whole process. That's my advice to everybody. You've got these on there all the time. Listen to the podcasts because they're on there when you're driving about anywhere, when you're getting up first thing in the morning, when you're getting a shower and all the rest of it. Watch the shows as well. There's other things we do. You do letting shows every other week, Richard, on a Saturday morning at 9:30, which gives you a lot of wealth of experience and knowledge. It's more technically orientated, isn't it? Talking about the processes and how to do it. But for the Wealth Creation Show, this is more about the bigger, the more strategic approach to property investment, the more strategic approach to investments themselves. We just focus heavily on property investment because I challenge anybody out there to tell me there's a better asset class that provides a better return over the medium to long term than what property investment does. And I'll probably do that as well if that's the case, if you can show me that asset class. But I don't. In the 30 years I've been doing this, I've been challenging people to give me that asset class, and there's not one person that's been able to come back to me and say, so-and-so asset class does a lot better than property investment. They can't. It's because it's bricks and mortar, it's safe as houses, it's been there for years, and people always need a roof over their head, especially when we're not building enough properties throughout the UK, and more people are returning to rented, the younger generation rent, then purely for the fact that they need flexibility of working, training, moving. They choose not to buy now, they want to rent in the beginning. That's what it comes down to. It's want rather than actually need, I would say. And that's it, guys. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Richard. Appreciate that. If anybody else want to get in touch with us, Richard's details on this post. And bye-bye for now. See you next week.
See you later.